Greetings, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Dreamscapes. Today we have our friend Ken Hanneman from Cleveland, Ohio. Ken's been in the restaurant business for 25 years, mostly focused in the growth and teaching, human development side of things. You can find his work at ungraduated.com, the Ungraduated Living podcast, and his book, Ungraduated, Finding Your Why and Dropping Out of Outdated Belief Systems. We're going to get right back to him in 2 seconds. First, if you would you kindly please like, share, and subscribe to the Dreamscapes podcast. Tell your friends. Always need more listeners and volunteer dreamers. You can get a t-shirt, coffee mug at the Spring Store at BenjaminDreamWizard.com. Also podcast MP3 versions of every episode. Also, I'm terrible at this. 14 currently available works of historical dream literature. The most recent, Dreams in Homer and Greek Tragedy. Very proud of that one. Lots of translations. That is enough housekeeping out of me. And always need more whiskey for gaming. You can't see that, but my whiskey's half gone, so I haven't been gaming lately. Anyway, I rambled enough. Back to our guest, Ken. Thank you patiently waiting through my housekeeping. More about you now. Welcome.
Thank you, Benjamin. I'm excited to be here. I just love this whole dream conversation. I feel that more and more people need to lean into this aspect of life, and talking about dreams has always fascinated me. It's just my first time coming onto a show to discuss it, but it saddens me whenever I talk to people and they say that they don't dream. And I'm like, well, you do. You're just not remembering it. So you got to find a way to clear the clutter and slow the mind and put out that intention, which I work very hard to do. And I'd say I probably remember over half of my dreams. I wouldn't say 100%, but yeah, I'm tuned into it, dialed into it. And I think it's an important part of life that we should explore. Heck, we're asleep a third of our lives, they say, and we're not just lying there sleeping per se. Our mind is active, and it could be telling us things that are important about our lives. So I'm looking forward to the conversation with you.
Very cool. As you were talking, I always have thoughts, busy mind. Funny thing, I don't remember most of my dreams. I am mostly unaware that I have even had a dream. I'm so deep in the subconscious, I guess. And occasionally when I do have an awareness that I dreamed, it's nothing but disconnected images, so scattered that I couldn't even give it a coherent narrative. I couldn't tell you what came first. I couldn't give you details of the scene. I'm envious of people who can dream, which is, I think, part of my fascination with dreams. I've got like maybe 5 dreams in my entire life I could describe in a narrative form. Pretty rare. So 45 years. That's one every, I don't know. I can't math. I don't remember that. 1 every 9. That's not enough.
That's what's so fascinating about it, though. It's everyone is so different, and it kind of comes down to, what do you want out of it, and what are you exploring? I can tell you, and I know we're going to get into it. I have these reoccurring dreams, but I've also had an out-of-body experience that was a lucid experience that consciously my awareness left my body, and that was something that I very much knew wasn't a dream. So technically it wasn't a dream. It's a different conversation about consciousness, but lucid dreaming and non-lucid dreaming and reoccurring dreams, all this stuff is fascinating. Even I had an experience at one point where I had a false awakening, and I thought I was awake, but I was still dreaming. And
awakening in a dream.
Yeah, it's so many different layers, and we can go down all those rabbit trails and discuss my experiences, and hopefully listeners who are listening to this too are saying, wow, yeah, hey, I've had some of that too, because I think that we should be exploring it. Personally, at least that's my own choice.
And there's an interesting overlap between a lot of these things. I mean, so I'm doing the historical dream literature book editing, and this is kind of my own self-generated masterclass in learning about these things. What do teachers in college do? Well, they've read all the other guys' stuff, and now they know about that stuff, and they can tell you what the theories are. Well, that's what I'm doing with dreams. I'm just reading everyone that's ever published anything, and a lot of it's repeating, which is good. It's kind of how I learn. I need repetition to get things. Two things you said. There's a lot of overlap between dreamlike experiences and dreams themselves as such, sleeping, how do I describe it? Nocturnal dream phenomena, sleep experience during sleep. And then there's other things like right before or after we're asleep, but not quite awake, trance, hallucinations, different stuff. It's all experiences our brain is having. So it's literally all happening in the same place. Unless it's not. That's the second point, which is there are traditions in other cultures. And even I think in some of the Greek and the whole Greek and Roman tragedy stuff, like Greek or epic poetry and tragedy, is references beliefs that people had that your soul actually leaves your body at night and goes places, and that's what is happening during sleep. So I can't validate that scientifically. Hell if I know. I mean, is that what we experience? So out of body experiences could be very similar to that. It's just we're having that dream while awake, but it's not a dream per se, like how we think of it scientifically.
Yeah, it's so there's a lot of questions around it. Science loves to try to put a finite beginning and end to all their studies, and it's hard to do that when it comes to consciousness. But what I can speak to about it that is known knowledge, if people go research it, is remote viewing, which is very similar to out-of-body experiences where you can be conscious or unconscious. But the CIA has done studies that they say that they've stopped doing, but they were training people to remote view. And I don't know how much you've read about Robert Monroe, but he is one of the most well-documented out-of-body travelers, if you will, that would consciously roll out of his body and spiritually or consciously project himself. And he documented all of these things upon waking. And he has three books on the topics. It's Robert Monroe's Journeys Out of the Body, I believe. It's a whole series. And he had friends that he was very apprehensive at first. He even mentioned that he could do this with, because they thought he'd be, put into the insane asylum, because in the 1960s and 50s, this stuff just wasn't very, very well known or discussed. He'd go to the doctor and say, "What's wrong with me? Am I dying? Do I have a brain tumor?" So his only real practical use case was to see if it was legit real, that he had some kind of special ability, which I don't know if it's a special ability, but some people do seem to have this dream recall or conscious awareness, out-of-body awareness, remote viewing awareness through consciousness easier than others. But I think it's like a muscle that if you work on it, you too can have these experiences if you so desire. He was somebody who didn't desire it, and it just started happening, so he thought he was dying. Imagine you wake up and you're consciously aware, you see your body lying there on the bed, and you're like, "Oh my God, I'm dead." So it's just, it's fascinating stuff, but there is some documented evidence of this awake dream state, I guess you could call it. And even that's fascinating.
Oh yeah. And I've been fascinated with that entire concept, both, out of body experiences and remote viewing, going all the way back to the 90s. I don't know if you remember a guy named Art Bell, used to do late night Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell. You're on the air from the wild card line. That guy. Loved it. But broadcast from the land of Nod, broadcasting from Pahrump, Nevada. And he would talk to everybody, aliens, the Bigfoot, all kinds of, ghosts and parapsychology type of stuff, not parapsychology, parascience type of stuff, cryptozoology. I've always been fascinated with that stuff. And it's just because we can't prove something yet doesn't mean it isn't real. It does mean, we were talking about science, is like the way I view science and bringing it to what I do here is there's a whole spiritual realm that is entirely possible. I can't endorse it because I don't understand it. Number one, I can't prove it or explain it. That doesn't mean it isn't real. It means I can't scientifically say from that science, like hypothesis, test, result, can't make it happen myself. So what do? I set those boundaries on, here's as far as I can go in terms of what I will tell you I believe is the case. But again, that doesn't, and also my expertise only goes so far in terms of like, I don't have lucid dreams. I've never had an out-of-body experience. So I'm trying to conceptualize all these things by people's descriptions. And I take for granted they're not lying about it. Okay. Step one. And now what is it? How do we make sense of it? So I like to definitely bound my recommendations and describe my particular brand of wizardry, so to speak, and say, I'm not going to claim to know things I don't. That's Socrates, my hero, is like, don't be an asshole. Just don't be like that. The fool thinks he knows more than he does. So
it's definitely wiser to take that approach. But what I've learned in my own experiences is, and I say this often, truth comes from experiences. Otherwise, it's just a theory or a hypothesis. You may agree with what you hear, but if you haven't experienced it, it can't really be your truth. And that's the biggest problem with faith and certain other spiritual religions. And, not that we got to get into all of that, but if people say, well, show me. Well, of course, if they showed you and you experienced it, then it would become truth. So, but some of these things do get experienced. in certain individuals. I myself have had these experiences, so I know that they were real. And saying that here validates it for me, but for any listeners, like, yeah, okay, well, it's never happened to me, so it's not real to me.
Yeah,
yeah, exactly. So it's very logical that that's how things work. But I do think keeping an open mind about these kinds of things is important as well too. Like you said, hey, it could be real. There are people, and I judge nobody on this, who say absolutely not, cannot be. That kind of mindset will absolutely keep you more, I think, anchored to the physical reality, the here and now, the touch, the materialistic world, of which if other astral planes or other dimensions do exist or overlie with ours, then you probably, because you're not even wanting to see them, won't, because your intention, I think, consciously matters. And you can get into all that science too with quantum physics and Albert Einstein's spooky action at a distance. They were starting to figure this stuff out, that everything is energy. Matter itself is energy, even though this chair I'm sitting on is solid or appears solid. It's not. And we found all this stuff out. I know it's hard to wrap your mind around.
I can move my hand through. This is matter, and it's parting around my solidity. But this table has these electro whatever. I don't remember the terminology, but bonds, and it's all it is these individual little atoms, just like in the air. But it's that bonding that makes it appear solid when it's not. It's like there's from the solid, liquid, gas spectrum and whatever's beyond on either side, it's all the same stuff, and it's all energy holding it together. And the whole vibrating strings of the universe goes right back to 2,000 years ago. Music of the spheres. These concepts never disappeared.
Everything is on a frequency. I like to explain it this way, is that right now you and I are talking, we can hear each other, but somewhere out there on a radio station, there's music playing. But right now we don't hear it because we're not attuned to it. So whenever you attune to something and you get into that frequency, you experience it. So how this has been explained to me and how I've researched it is that, if you attune yourself to the frequency of which is non-material, you will pass through objects. But that requires an altered state of consciousness, because clearly I am not on drugs, and I know that you cannot walk through a wall physically. You have to alter your consciousness to be able to do that, which is part of the astral travel or remote viewing, where you're consciously aware, but in a different frequency of awareness that can pass through objects. And that's a whole different conversation. But again, it's fascinating stuff that, again, science is beginning to prove it, but even mainstream news outlets have a hard time because there's, the words conspiracy or, impossibilities get thrown around. And if people don't research this or look into it, then they're not going to know what the possibilities are out there when it comes to the human experience. And that's what I love digging into, and what I love talking about is stuff like that, because I think more people should understand it, those who want to. Not everybody wants to, and that's okay. Some people aren't ready to have those kind of conversations and don't want to. I understand.
For sure. And then what you're talking about, like mainstream media or whatever, there's a bit of a expert say type of thing. Well, which experts? Why do they say that? And get into the, what's the actual research and how are they interpreting it? So many layers of understanding how an assertion, a conclusion is built out of the evidence and whether or not it fits. But before I forget, I wanted to mention, and anyone listening out there, if you've never gone and seen the audio frequencies experiment, and I wish I could remember the name of the video, but they basically take a black square suspended over a speaker and they sprinkle salt on it and they play boop, 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 different frequencies, and the salt makes patterns. You can see the frequency in a physical structure by how it's vibrating this piece of cardboard, whatever it is. Unbelievable that basically sound frequencies create a physical structure. I think that's leaning towards an understanding of like reality, what this is we're existing in. Blows my mind. I wanted to mention
I have seen that. And one other point I have to make about this too is light does it. Yes, frequencies of sound do it. But if you or any listener wants to have a great book that I think really helps tie this all together scientifically, the title is called Real Magic, and it's the subtitle is Ancient Wisdom, Modern Science, and a Guide to the Secret Power of the Universe by Dean Radin, PhD. So he breaks this thing down, and just Oh, the dogma of what the word magic has in society because of witches and the witch hunts and all the things that people that they always perceived to be, occulted information. And when you hear the word occult, it doesn't mean evil. It just means hidden information. And it goes into this ability that humankind has. And it's a well rated book, over almost 1,300 reviews and ratings so far. So I just finished reading it, so it's fresh in my mind. And for anybody who's really fascinated with this kind of a conversation, go check out that book, Real Magic. It's just really enlightening.
Yeah, well, you can see, calling myself a wizard, I kind of lean into that. And for me, it's partly consciously self-aggrandizing, tongue-in-cheek. I mean, I go, look at that, I'm the wizard. That means I'm smart. I know things. I can do magical stuff that appears impossible. But I also believe it in a very literal, so it's metaphysically true, and I think literally true. We've got this archetype of the wizard. What is he? He's old, got gray hair. He's been around a while. Maybe he knows some things. Maybe he can speak some magic words in the sense of telling people, sharing education, telling people things they need to hear to improve their life, warning against dangers. I mean, all kinds of magic in our ability to communicate. So I think literally and metaphysically. And the other side of it is the crystal ball side of things, where you can go, if you do that, you're going to have this result. Why do I know? Cause and effect. I just pay attention.
Exactly.
I've been around long enough to see what happens, studied to understand. So this whole idea of things appearing magical. What was it? Sufficiently advanced technology appears magical to the uninitiated,
always,
so to speak. Yeah. And I think that goes for intellectual ability in a way, and not like I'm smarter than people type of thing. But if you're not open to it, as you say, if you're not searching, seeking, looking to take in and integrate all these things, you won't have the ability to come to any of those conclusions or use those skills. That's my concept of wizardry and magic in that sense.
Yeah, and last thing I'll say about it is that there's not exactly powers that be lining up to try to help us discover this about ourselves, because why would they? They like to stay in power. And I say they, meaning anybody, any entity, government, or rulers of the world that require a population to look to them for answers. They would not want us to discover that we could probably solve a lot of our own problems just by what we're taking in, what we're thinking about, our awareness level. There's so much proof in science in epigenetics and how thoughts interact with the body and how it changes our DNA, and we can live longer lives. And just by simply thinking and being less stressed and less anxious, and those types of things are not necessarily coming out to us in droves of information, because again, there's a lot of reasons, I think, and that's where you can go into conspiracy if you want to, because I'm certainly theorizing here. I don't know if that's the case, but it seems illogical to me that if you could tell people that they have superpowers that have been portrayed in comic book movies that maybe are a little bit exaggerated, but there is some truth to this ability, then they wouldn't want us to know this kind of stuff. So it's just interesting conversation that I love getting into.
Well, that made me think of two things. One first, which I'm going to actually put last, but I've always been a big fan of M. Night Shyamalan's, oh wow, now the names, it's not Shattered, it's Unbreakable.
Unbreakable, yep. Very familiar with it.
Just the idea that human biodiversity, we have probably had in a lot of different forms demigods. And I would put, so Bruce Willis, a cartoonish representation. I mean, that's where we get the whole idea of comic books are just the, Greek mythology of our modern age in that sense. Like here's these, and what's the latest Thor movie? They brought back a lot of Greek gods, that kind of thing. But we've always had the Ubermenschen, so to speak, which got distorted by certain political philosophies. But the original meaning was people who are just of tremendous ability. It can be physical, Hercules style. It can be mental, Stephen Hawking style. These are giants that walk among us in that metaphysical sense. And we want to develop that as much as possible, because those are the people that invent the stuff that makes life better for everybody. So I was going somewhere with that, but that's just in that.
No, idea. you're going down the right channels, and there's so many more questions that are opened up after you even begin to propose these types of questions, because you can get into a lot of different, again, I hate to say conspiracy, I hate that word, because I think that even,
Yeah.
not that all conspiracies are true, but if there's half truths within them, they deserve to be looked at, in my personal opinion and in my own belief system. So I go down these channels of, hey, humankind, where did we come from? It's one of the biggest questions that humankind can probably ever ask itself. And
Yeah.
if you look at a lot of the studies of the genome and the genetics, there's an altercation that they cannot explain with the 21st chromosome, that something appeared to give us consciousness at a certain point in time.
Yeah.
And that could be God if you're spiritual, or if you're a little bit more of the critical thinking and you go back to a lot of the doctrines and you see a lot of the spiritual teachings that talked about chariots from the sky,
Right.
and angels that had glowing about themselves, and just the things that our ancestors would have tried to have explained in terms of extraterrestrials. And I don't have to necessarily mean little green men. It could be more evolved humans at some point that have come here or tried to tinker with us. And again, it shouldn't be too crazy to think about, because in this modern age, we're doing it now. We are cloning objects, we are creating life ourselves. So we are playing God ourselves, although probably more on an infant level compared to the grand scheme of the universe. But if other life forms exist out there, who's to say any of these things, to your point, demigods could have existed? And time over eons and eons of time that we think that this modern society has been around for here on Earth is just a blink of an eye. And if we were all wiped off at one point by an asteroid or a flood or whatever, solar flare melted the ice caps and humanity had to be rebuilt, this knowledge might truly be occulted for that reason, because we don't want people to know, because it doesn't fit the mainstream view of what we've been taught. And that's what, again, I exist for, and why outside of my corporate work, I love that kind of philosophy, and I can't help myself but go down those channels. It's just so fascinating.
Oh yeah, definitely. And there's so many roads to go with on that type of stuff. But if I look at say two things, just to kind of give an example, the bookend it is, what used to be considered secret, arcane, even occult knowledge was stonemasonry. And they had the Masons, and it was secretive. It's like, this is a guild. We don't tell people how we do our stuff, how we cut the stone, how we frame it up, the art of engineering. It was kept very secretive to maintain a monopoly on it. And that could be very similar to, maybe not exactly the same in terms of what is dangerous, but we don't go around telling everyone how to make nuclear bombs. There are countries that can't. They don't know how to do the process, and we don't tell them because maybe that would be dangerous. So there's all kinds of secret knowledge that is kept secret for good reasons sometimes. And maybe back in the day, there were other reasons not to share things with people that were more, and still going on today, it's more self-serving for the powers that be, so to speak. I mean, there's a lot of people out there. The funny thing about conspiracy theories is, like, that term suggests it is impossible for two people to meet and say, hey, we share an interest. Let's work together to make sure these other people don't ruin our good thing. That absolutely happens. Now you get into specific
all the time
theories. This guy did this at this time. Now you got to have some proof. I'll tell you one thing I'm not a big fan of is the current globalist World Economic Forum stuff, where they got their plans and they've put politicians in place, and those politicians are enacting the plans. We've got these corporate billionaires telling our political leaders the laws they're going to force upon us, and people are not happy about this, and it's happening. And so there's no conspiracy there. This is literally happening. The youth leaders of the WEF, and they're in every country around the world. And yeah, I don't remember anyone asking me if I wanted a one world government. I do not. No, thank you. No, thank you.
Yeah, it's no longer a government for the people, by the people. That's of a bygone era. At least I should say, I think it's more of a government for what they think the people need. It's not so much what they think that they need.
Back this neo-feudalism, we got out of it. And, we said, hey, no more god kings. You're not actually descended from, the sun god Ra. We're going to choose not to embrace that social structure anymore. We're going to look at individuals, individual rights, and all that kind of, very libertarian is my thing. And now they're kind of going back, well, we know better than you, and we have a lot of money and a lot of guns, and we're just going to kind of make you do it. So you will own nothing, and you will be happy. I will not be happy.
It's a great little bookend point to the conversation that we've had thus far, which is simply, I've the people that I talk to and get into depth conversations about this, who are a little bit more critical, I guess, than I am, and I approach things with curiosity first and criticality second. I think it's just more wise to be that way. But they say things to me like, "You really think that humankind can move an agenda like that forward? You really think that that's possible?" And I say, yes, absolutely it is, because it's been done before. It's being done right now. And no offense or judgment. If you do not think that, then I think you are a little bit naive in terms of assuming that powers that be cannot come together with agendas and conspire for what they believe is the best way to go. And it happens all the time.
I mean, human history shows we have had very powerful central authorities that literally enslaved people and then built pyramids. It's not like it never happened before.
Correct.
But I didn't want to go back to the whole idea of like, this just popped into my head. Like, if you ever saw or read the description of angels as they're supposed to appear, wheels within wheels, these weird configurations, like, don't sound like a guy in a robe, a man-like figure with wings. It sounds like an alien. It looks weird.
It does, totally.
Yeah. So that whole idea of, chariots of the gods and whatnot, entirely possible. Do I know for sure? No. But man, I would love to know. And I'm fascinated by the entire prospect.
Me too.
So that's where I go with that kind of open-minded stuff.
Yeah, when somebody tried to draw a depiction of perhaps an alien that appeared to be human, it might not have been that they had wings, but they could fly. They could maybe levitate. They could. So how does someone depict this? Again, going back in time, it makes logical sense to put wings on them and make them look like it. And they very well could have been humanoid. I've done a ton of research that says that, people of the light or the Watchers, there's a lot involved with the Gnostic faith I'm digging into right now that was not supposedly, is and was early Christianity that was suppressed by the Orthodox Church because of the viewpoints of different extraterrestrial light watchers, if you will, who influenced humanity. They didn't want that in the Bible because it didn't fit their narrative of control and trying to actually get humankind to perhaps look externally and not look within. There's a lot of different layers here that I know we could talk forever and ever about. But you got to question this stuff, I think. And that's
for sure. Well, I think this is
my mind works.
This is a great segue into your work, your book. You wrote, so you've got ungraduated.com, you've got the Ungraduated Living podcast, and you've got your book, Ungraduated. We'll keep that simple. It's got a subtitle, but all of these links will be in the description below. And it seems like that book you wrote has been influenced by your journey of questioning, definitely, and what is it? My own personal experience. I remember years and years ago having a moment where I was like, I need to decide what I'm going to do with my abilities. So let's say I could do anything I want. And that's not true, technically speaking, but there's a broad range and I get to pick anything. And the first thing I had to decide, do I want to use my powers for good or evil? Because I was able to look at the world and say, there's a lot of evil people that have a lot of success being bad people, manipulative, basically my skill set could be used, Jedi and Sith style. I mean, that might've been what opened my eyes, that whole idea of, the two sides of the Force, the yin yang. And I'm looking at that going, I've got to make a decision. And then once I pick a path and you commit to it, then I can explore the options available. Because you pick the evil side, the Sith side, you're going to cut out, we can end up being a sociopath and doing a lot of stuff that limits other opportunities because I'll leave it at that. The other side, there's going to be things ethically you don't do, which could be very successful shortcuts, but you have to choose not to do those things for a reason. But all of this then led me to the idea, and rambling, but getting to your book, at some point you've got to look at, what have I been told? What do I believe? How am I going to put it to use in this broader context of, now I need to live my life going forward in some successful manner that keeps me alive and accomplishes something and generates relationships or not, or however I choose to go forward. Enough for me. I think that all relates to your book and your journey.
Yeah. And you're not rambling at all. I enjoy listening to you and how you format these questions. So thank you for it. I'm very much the same way. And people have told me I haven't always been able to land the ship sometimes whenever I'm communicating. So I try to be aware of keeping all this happening up here bring it down into the landing. But no, I very much think the same way. So yeah, the book really came off of what's probably been the better part of my life of questioning things. I've never been somebody who has been very well sat with because I said so. And I use that example all the time in the book. Well, it's in the book at some point from the beginning that I love my parents, but I was a very inquisitive child. And I think a lot of times they thought I was being a smartass and saying, why, just to be that little brat kid. But for the most part, probably not 100% of the time. I'm sure I was being a little bit sarcastic at times, but for the most part, I was very curious. Why is this like that? And oftentimes they didn't have the answers, so it became because I said so. Yeah. And that never sat well with me. So I don't like anybody saying, don't look at this because it's incorrect. Or I just believe we need to do our own work. And I call it doing the work to find out, again, big questions in life. Why are we here? Where do we come from? What purposes do we have? What reason for being do we have? What creates happiness? You know, I've discovered it's not the materialistic things. I have a great life. I've worked hard to accomplish what I've accomplished, but I've been on record stating you could take it all away from me tomorrow and you will not remove my happiness, because I have this enlightenment, which again, I think is the jumping off point. Not that I am enlightened like the Buddha, but I am enlightened to the perspective of life not being this beautifully painted construct of go to school, high school, finish high school, go to college or university and get your degree, go to then get a house, buy a car, have children. None of it worked that way for me in my life in that order whatsoever. And I'm very happy with how things have turned out, but I continuously question what life is and why things work how they do, and this philosophy behind belief system. Everything that I've been able to discover in my business, corporately, and in those who I see who have success and those who I see who don't, very much are either in a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. And that's either believing you can or can't, or tuning out things that the world says is possible or are not possible. Again, conspiracy versus facts. You can go down those lines too. I just look at everything. And I decided to say, let me make my informed decision. But the problem, I think, sometimes all too often in this modern world is that people don't make time for this. They make excuses for why they're too busy or too caught up or whatever's going on. Not enough time. We have one of the most technologically advanced societies known to man. So we think with technology, we can absolutely make time to discover. Yes, you got to sort through a lot of perhaps challenging information, but when you find your own personal experiences that tell you that this stuff is possible, it would be a shame to not pay attention to it. So the whole purpose of the book really walks the reader through that. Yeah, open your eyes, ask more questions. The first chapter is called Blind Spots, because I think that we just don't see what we don't see. Yeah. And I liken it to a fish in water. If you ask a fish, how's the water? The fish will probably say, the hell are you talking about? What's water? Yeah. Kind of like us with air, how's the air? I don't know. We breathe it in. Thank God it's here. We have enough oxygen inside of it to sustain life, but we don't really walk around thinking about what we can't see within this physical reality. So the book starts there and it kind of walks through, in pretty layman's terms, some of the science behind energy and how it interacts with us from a life standpoint, and how it materializes with thoughts being first. You mentioned something earlier, and cause and effect. So I go through the different principles of natural law, which are really hermetic in teaching. I've studied Hermeticism, and it goes back to the Kybalion, which is a book that was actually published by the three initiates. We don't know who they were, around 1912. And it was information that's universal law, natural law, which starts with the law of mentalism. Everything begins with thought. The entire universe arguably could have been a thought, if you believe in the Big Bang Theory or not, that then circumvented physical matter. So all of us in life begin with thought. And then you get into the law of correspondence, the laws of cause and effect, rhythm, polarity, vibration, and gender. Gender meaning the balancing of natural feminine energy as well as masculine energy, and at times when we use that, if we're out of balance or not. So these 7 natural laws are intrinsically wired into this universe, and you really have to understand how they affect life. And then you can go into health and wellness and success and Think and Grow Rich if you want to, go down that avenue of money. And to your point earlier, I think before our recording, we were talking about, or maybe it was during the actual recording, of using money for good or for evil. I think you were just saying it. It just,
Yeah,
do you
just a
want
moment ago, choosing how to
Yeah.
use your powers. You could be a Jedi or a Sith. The Force
Yeah.
is the Force. Force doesn't care how you use it. It simply exists.
Correct.
Yeah.
We have labeled things as good or bad, but the fact of the matter is that's just human nature. So I talk about labels in the book, and there really isn't good or evil. It's just what you choose to do with it that defines whether you're going to use it with good intent or bad intent, for lightness or darkness. That's why it's called dark magic or magic of the light. So it's just the universe doesn't care. The universal energy source does not care. You as an individual and what you want to represent is kind of how it's decided, at least how I kind of tend to think about it. So that's a longer probably spiel on the book, but it culminates with purpose and trying to define what it is that matters to you in life, and walks the reader through all of that from really about 15 plus years of my study that I've been involved in. So I love it. It's a passion outside of my corporate day job, and I can get into some deep conversations like this because it's what I love to do.
And it all goes back to, a lot of people attribute it to Socrates, know thyself. Actually, he was referencing what was inscribed above the Oracle at Delphi, which is, you're coming here to receive mystical messages or whatnot, but for the purpose of knowing yourself better in the world. And I think a lot of things start with that. And you're right that, in my own experience as well, a lot of people get caught up in day-to-day living and stress and strain and responsibilities, and all of that is real. And you got to put food on the table and keep a roof over your house. You got to spend some time thinking, why am I doing this? What is this for? What's my motivation? Almost like an actor. What's my motivation in this scene? Why am I doing this? Why don't I do something else? It all depends on what you're trying to accomplish. Your goals are going to be big. If you never stop to kind of think about, what am I trying to accomplish? What do I want out of this? A lot of us go on autopilot, and that's where the cultural traditions go. And sometimes you can't blame people. It's like, well, this is what my generations of ancestors have done. It seemed to work for them. Maybe I shouldn't monkey with it. Fair enough. A lot of those things are very functional, but you got to know your place in it. I mean, because we have those, and not your place as in like prescribed place, but where are you going to choose to fit in? How are you going to make use of these tools that have been prepared for you, so to speak? All this past thought and accomplishment that's gone before. It's like, thank God the automobile was invented. We can go on vacation, or you can drive it into a brick wall. These are not the same thing. You got to choose. What am I doing with these tools? Anyway, that was my tangent on your.
No, correct. And you need to be able to, you're right about, people won't be able to think about those things until they reach a certain level of sustainability. So Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a good template, I think. And there's some controversy that's around Maslow's hierarchy of needs, because different people have thought differently about it. But you got to have safety, food, some love and compassion in your life. And then once you have achieved those social and safety structures, is where I think a lot of people go wrong, is that then they seek externally more stuff, more things, more accomplishments, more status, more labels, and they find emptiness after a short time of having those. And that's where I think this perpetual cycle gets us caught up. And I think it was Socrates who also said that a life not well lived is not worth examining. So if you get to that point of being able to examine yourself, well, then hopefully you're living a better life for it. And I know I'm somebody who's a constant self-examiner and reflector of all these things. And that's, again, I think not everybody can get to that point. We have nearly 8 billion people on the planet. And I don't know if all 8 billion, well, I know that not all 8 billion are able to think like this, because some, unfortunately, are still just worried about trying to find their next meal or having a safe roof over their head. So thankfully here in this country, the majority of us are beyond that and still searching for more meaning. And if you're looking external for material things, you're not going to find it there, at least not for a long, sustained period of time.
Yeah. No, and I've always been a big fan of the Maslow's hierarchy. I mean, I've thought about it a long time, and trying to make sense of it for what it is. So when you mentioned a book of natural laws, I thought maybe you were going to the Lockean, 17th, 18th century, whatever it was, 18th century, I think it was 17th century.
I'm familiar with what you're talking about. Not that I want to.
Natural rights, natural law, and that kind of. I'm not going to get the date right. I can't in my head. 1700s. But at the very bottom of it is those physical necessities, not because they are meaningful in this metaphorical sense, but because if you ain't alive, none of it matters. You can't do anything else without being first alive. To live, you must have shelter from the elements. They'll kill you. Food, you'll starve to death. Water, you'll dehydrate. Clothing, again, against the elements, or protect your feet from getting stepping on a twig and getting an infection. So it's almost incontrovertible that everything based on are you or are you not alive to experience anything else, and then you go up from there when need. So I'm a big fan, and again, it can be critiqued, but I think that's why. And then in terms of natural rights, that's like the as in our U.S. Constitution, like the right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. That right to life thing right there is like, if you're not alive, none of it else matters. There's no liberty for the dead. They're dead. So again, Maslow style, it all connects together. But then you mentioned that book, and I'm like, I actually want to find that. Maybe I'll edit that one too and add it to my collection.
Yeah, it was the Kybalion, so Kybolian, I think is how it's spelled, and it comes from Egyptian time frame. So the book was really, three initiates are the authors, which there's no names, but it was published around 1912. And again, it's based off of Egyptian teachings from a gentleman that was named Hermes Trismegistus, which
yeah. I do know that.
That basically just means thrice great. They believed that he was a demigod of some type, or had some kind of a higher spiritual awareness, that he was teaching people around him at the time how the universe works and how life works, and all those different principles that you cannot argue. You can say you believe or you don't, but it's kind of like gravity. If you jump off a cliff, you will fall unless you have a parachute.
It's gonna happen. Yeah.
So, and it's so well written. It's very layman's terms, I think, because it was written in 1912, not like 3,000 or 4,000 years ago. So it's actually a great book that I think depicts things so well about how life works. Absolutely.
And no, I was going to say something else on top of that with you. Natural laws. Shit. I went off into my head of like thinking about this stuff. Probably this book has been done by a bunch of other people. I'll probably just find a copy someone else did once upon a time. But
yeah, there's been different interpretations of it. And then your book that you're talking about, like when I find and hear stuff like this, I have to always jot it down too. So any recommendations that you have or listeners have, I mean, I'm all for this kind of stuff. Share stuff, and you're going to get a lot of good from anything that you pick up if you want to find goodness in it. You can shoot holes all through it too, but you got to be, again, open-minded and challenge yourself to think differently.
Well, of course, I recommend all the books on the books page at BenjaminTheDreamWizard.com.
There you go. Nice little plug right there.
Right. Yeah. That's good stuff. And again, for you, it's ungraduated.com. When you mention that too, my brain goes a lot of different directions in terms of like, what do I do? I start getting the abstract connections too. And when I think graduated, we think school. And what I think, but also it's the basic concept comes from marking progress, a graduated cylinder in science. And the more you add to it, the more graduated, technically, the higher the fluid goes. So we have all these kind of concepts wrapped into what does it mean to graduate, to achieve the next level. It's for gamers out there, it's you've powered up, you've got new skill points to spend in enhancing your experience in life, in the video game life, but also in life. So if it's good to question, I think, whether certain paths are right for everyone or right for you specifically or not you. So, and I think you'd mentioned that your path didn't take you, say, to college. It took you into the business world. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, what are you doing in college? You're learning skills that are going to be useful to your success, to your personal growth. If you can jump into it, and we used to have, and I'd like to see it come back, a greater tradition of apprenticeships, journeyman stuff. It's like you hit 18, do you need another 4 years of school? Maybe you jump in and you start learning how to weld. Whatever it is, we need welders. We need plumbers. We need people doing hands-on physical work, keeping the power lines working in a snowstorm, or our society will collapse. Not everyone can go to school. Not everyone is, say, meant or suited to go to school. There's different kinds of intelligence, in my opinion. There's people that are like me, and I'm living in abstract word land, putting those mental, rich mental life in that sense. There are people who have physical skills I will never acquire. They are vastly superior to me in what they can do with their hands, and it makes sense to them in a way I can't even conceive. I'm not better than anyone. I have a different path. So you got to choose what's right for you. And that's that examination of, what does graduating mean to me? What does it mean for me to hit the next level? Where am I going with this? What am I going to use? What do I need? rambling again. Those are my thoughts based on just that one
It's
word.
a great, no, that's a very, very good summation. And it's just basically saying, I think a lot of us, to your point, Benjamin, have been that round peg trying to be smashed into a square spot. You know, that the system says this is how it's supposed to be in school. And I know this is starting to change now. I was talking to somebody recently, I'll save her name, but she has a daughter who's going to a school now that's more revolutionary, more progressive in a sense that they don't have a construct that says you have to take all of these classes. It's what are you interested in?
Mhm.
What would you like to learn more about? And I think when you evaluate a student on that level, it's a whole different ballgame because
Yeah.
I wasn't good at certain subjects that the school system said I had to learn, and I wasn't interested. And I think that the human
Yeah.
psyche, from a psychology standpoint, you can, I'm sure, relate to this, is that it's hard to keep attention on things that you're not really wired and tapped into.
Yeah.
So that ability to go a different direction, but I understand why it's been set up this way. It's starting to change. But to your point, yeah, the whole graduation, what does that mean for you in your life? Are you living your life or somebody else's? And what's important to you? And should you deprogram yourself out of the programming that you've been given? Not that all of it's bad. I don't put a message out that all of your programming has been bad,
Mhm.
but who's given it to you? Where did it come from? Whose path are you following, yourself or someone else's? And just to reflect upon this, and if necessary, ungraduate from certain aspects of life that have been holding you back.
Yeah, for sure. And that's the idea. There's graduating with purpose. And if you did not take a path intentionally because you knew what was on it and you knew what you were going for, it's okay to step back and say, that's not for me. I tried it out.
Right.
Last thing kind of in this general ballpark, I get ideas, and I've had this idea before. It's kind of like, I think you got to blend all these things too. There's useful life skills. Really everyone should have. You should kind of be able to read, maybe do some basic math, but beyond that, now we get into, okay, if I can find people's passion, what makes them go, whoa, show me more of that. I want to know. Then you can say, okay, on this path, here's how to mix in reading skills and writing skills. Here's how math figures into this element. You can still teach people all the stuff they need to learn in their, we don't have the education system set up that way yet. Hopefully we'll get there, and what that looks like and how to actually implement it. Hell if I know, but that's the path I would want to go. So,
Me too. Me
Right?
too. And I
Yeah.
think people are starting to figure it out. There are schools that I'm being told that exist like this. They're just a lot fewer in numbers right now. So we'll see where it all goes. But people are starting to pay attention to that whole entire process. So I agree. Basic life skills, math, some reading. Outside of that, where is your purpose and passion? Imagine if more people in the world woke up every day excited to go do their job versus feeling that they have to. Now I know we need certain jobs for
Yeah.
society to function. It's hard to find people who say, gosh darn it, I'm excited to go collect trash today because it's what I love to do. But there are
Yeah.
people out there who actually enjoy doing it or don't mind doing it. So we need
get
to have
those people
certain
really-
basic.
Really passionate about saving the environment. Bam!
Yes,
God,
amen
you
on
love
that.
the world so much. You want to get all that garbage off the beach. Pay that guy.
There you go.
You know, or
Yeah.
what is it? I was thinking of something else too, where it's like, no one's, maybe there's one guy, but very few, I think, passionate about, I get to sit in a cubicle for 8 hours and stare at a computer screen and crunch numbers and
Right.
Excel. God shoot me. You know, just
Not for me, man.
I
Not for me
couldn't,
either.
You know, no, not really. And that's tough too, because are those jobs necessary? Maybe they are. Maybe they're not. Maybe we could do something completely different.
In some ways that's changing too through technology. That's where I think AI really is good. There's a lot of people who get scared with AI and what its future might bring. But I do believe the mundane tasks, and I'm not for job elimination, but to give human potential its best opportunity to evolve consciously and do better things for itself and this planet. We
Yeah.
got to put people in jobs that have meaning, human meaning. And if you can have a computer or a bot do some of those things, then yeah, because now again, if someone loves it and they're a number cruncher and they absolutely get excited for that kind of stuff, God bless them.
Please do it.
First
Yes.
of all,
We need it
but
too.
go ahead and do it.
We need certified
Yeah.
public accountants for sure. If that's your passion,
Yes.
man, you love numbers. God bless you. I'll tell you, and we may differ on this, we may not. I'm very much against actual artificial intelligence. I'm on the lines of Frank Herbert in the Dune series. Thou shalt not make a computer in the image of human mind.
I am more on your same frame too. It scares me more than it excites me, to be
Yeah.
honest. But there is some utility for it, I think. But
Sure, as
it's
long as it's bot style, no
yeah.
self-directed learning, sentience, trying to make a. My biggest problem is people go, why not? It's going to happen anyway, or it'll actually be a good thing. My caveat is we are flawed creatures. We can only be flawed creators. Therefore, our creations will be flawed. Therefore, Terminator, Skynet, big problems. Please, no.
Westworld, all those kinds of different things. Yes, I have
Yeah.
seen.
But, we got robots building cars. That's fine.
I know. I
But
know.
they're not thinking for themselves and deciding humans will drive this vehicle because we say so. Bad idea. In my estimation, people have different opinions. But I'm not against bots, automation in a lot of those styles. But thinking machines, true artificial intelligence, oh boy, or transhumanism, even monkeying with the genome and like, let's invent better humans. I don't know if we can. I don't know if we're literally capable.
There are people trying very much right now. This is not conspiracy. You can go research it online to upload the human consciousness into a bioengineered bodysuit. If you've ever seen the show Altered Carbon, it was a Netflix series.
Well, I love the sci-fi stuff.
Yeah, the first season of Altered Carbon was kind of based off of this. Basically, it's a disc that they would just insert in the back of the skull. It was the movie aspect, the Hollywood aspect, but there is a project by 2045 to have the ability to literally, for enough money, you never have to die, supposedly. But at what cost? Then you hear about RFDI chips that kind of keep the body going. And then it's like, well, if you literally could upload your consciousness into another life form to continue on in life, would you want to? I mean, I don't know. It borders on all kinds of spiritual questions. And I have a belief set. I have a belief set more of, hey, we're here to live and experience kind of a human playground to grow spiritually. Trying to continue that process, it really screws with things, and that will be a pivotal point in time if and when we see that moment, for sure.
Yeah, and this is very much a matter of belief, so to speak. What I'm about to say, if we could, and perhaps we will, be able to make what appears to be a perfect, precise, exact copy of every single neuronal connection in the brain in a digital form, upload our consciousness to the cloud, so to speak, is that copy really us? Is it really human? Is Correct. It just such a convincing simulation we can't tell the difference? And that's where that matter of faith comes in. I tend to be on the side of, once you take out the wet works, it's not human anymore. So that will never be, in my opinion. You can disagree out there in audience land. I think faith-wise, I putting my belief in that it's not possible, and that we shouldn't do it. I said it. We'll see.
Yeah.
But is it really you living forever? I don't think so.
Yeah.
Humans die, and anything that doesn't die isn't human. And at that point, what are we? My opinion. Feel free to disagree, right?
I'm in the same camp as you, my friend. There's different Eastern religions that I can understand the idea of reincarnation, but even then the body still dies and the soul naturally, if you believe in this type of a process, comes back to incarnate for a different purpose. It could be by choice. It could be because it has to. I don't know all of that. I study it. I tend to actually veer more towards that understanding off of what I've researched and studied, but not that you must come back. You choose to come back to experience things. So if you look at it that way, then why? It's just a fear component, Benjamin. I think that people who are out there who are trying to do this, I think that they're so caught up in the left brain critical thinking aspect that to them, life does not end, even though they're talking about this thing, consciousness, that they used to think was conspiracy and didn't exist. Now they all of a sudden believe in it, and they're afraid of what might come next. So it's how do they prolong their current awareness without forgetting? Because when you reincarnate, outside of a few exceptional stories that I've read about, your mind is wiped and you don't recall. But even though a lot of people that I studied, James Leininger has one of the best cases of a reincarnation documentation that his parents documented from a young age, that he remembered his prior life. It was quite astounding whenever you go back and research that. But anyways, this whole idea of putting a human consciousness inside of a machine, yeah, what is that? That's definitely a hybrid of some type. It's not human at that point.
Yeah. And again, that's a matter of faith. Some people say, no, it's me. I know it'll be me and I'll enjoy being
Yeah.
me and I'll live forever. I'm like, I don't
I don't
think
know.
so, but do you, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm very often worried about, the Tesla promised us a man-made horrors beyond our comprehension because we have this infinite curiosity and we're going to try a lot of things that don't work and they're going to, and we've been warned, I think, throughout history by so many things, a lot of great literature, Dune, Frank Herbert's Dune being one of them that does a lot with the religious, politico, socio-cultural realm of belief systems and how they motivate people and how it affects politics. Genius guy. But then Island of Dr. Moreau, trying to create animal human hybrids and what would that look like? And is that human anymore? Is that elevating animals or is it degrading humans to a more animal-like status? Should we be playing God in this way? However you conceive of God, we're not that big and powerful and all-knowing, whatever that is. We're not the arbiters of nature in that sense. And man, I'm really like, don't mess with that. Don't mess with things you can't understand because how could it not go wrong? I don't know. So yeah, call me a Luddite and a scaredy cat and whatnot. That's like I'll just be human. I'll just die someday. It's okay. Maybe I reincarnate. Yeah. Maybe I don't. Newton's was the second law of thermodynamics. Energy cannot be destroyed. I'll be around somewhere. Maybe I'll come back.
There you go.
I think that is very likely in my estimation. But that brought me to another point too. You were saying about we're way back when we're talking about witches and occult stuff like that. But there's a nice overlap, I think, in the tradition of the Wiccan religion. You can do black magic. Magic is magic, but they say that shit comes back on you sevenfold before you curse someone.
Karmically.
Karmic and Eastern religion, karmic. You don't want to put that negative energy out in the world. You don't want to act evil. And this is, it connects to so much other stuff. Psychology. Say we got sociopathic types. No innate sense of sympathy, empathy towards other people. They just do what they do because that's what I want. That's a table, that's a chair, that's a person. I use them all the same. Maybe not. In a previous life, working in the inpatient psychiatry, the only way I could find to appeal to that type of person without an innate moral center, moral compass, was to share the idea of an enlightened self-interest. I'm like, hey, maybe you don't screw over your neighbor because you got to live next to them, and they're going to remember that shit, and they're not going to like you, and then now you got to move. And it's very much a karmic circle type of thing of like if. Butterfly effect almost. You never know, a small piece of rudeness or unkindness or taking advantage of someone and the dominoes start falling and man, it comes back around. It's going to hit you. You have to live in this world too. Don't make it worse. You're going to suffer. And so that makes sense. The sociopaths go, for my sake, I'm nice to you. I got that. I can do that. And I'm like, hey, it's not a cure, but moves us away from, people hurting each other. A little bit. It is
the law of cause and effect. It's cause and effect. And that's, again, in the Hermetic teachings that I referenced earlier, with the Kybalion, that whether it's this life or the next life, again, you got to expand your thinking to think what could come after. None of us know until that day comes. But yes, to your point on a lower level, your neighbor, that's going to come back to you more than likely in this life. But if you're killing people and using dark magic and black magic and you're getting away with it, and you think, even as your deathbed, you're lying there, I got over on them. Chances are you're not. And that's not even so much the God principle. It's just that if our universe is written on principles of cause and effect that operate in such a way that for every action you take, there will be an equal or greater reaction to it, then energy is energy. So at some point, it's going to come back, manifest in you or some other life, future life that, if some antagonist shows up because of what you did, it's how I believe this universe works energetically. So yes, to your point, that's something else that people have to realize is that, yes, it might appear on the surface to not be anything that, hey, you think there's no, you could be an atheist, there's no God, there's no devil, it just is action. Well, if the universe runs on a certain principle that whatever you put out, you will get back, well, then watch out. It's going to come back at some point. Yeah.
Well, that's kind of how I conceive of. So I'm a agnostic, atheist, deist. All of these things are true. There seems to be an unmoved mover that set off the Big Bang. Fair enough. And now we have a universe. Yeah, something. I don't know what it is. Call it God. That's fine. Well, how do we know what God is. We can only study the natural world and what it appears to be, our interactions with it and whatnot. I was going somewhere with that. Yeah.
Well, I can actually chime in a little bit with that.
Yeah.
It just to kind of riff off your thought there. So again, it's just kind of ironic that I'm reading and diving into the Gnostic teachings right now. So the Gnostics were the pre-Christians or earliest Christians, and a lot of what really draws them as being persecuted and why King James or the King James version of the Bible excluded a lot of their teachings, even though they knew Jesus allegedly and were disciples of Jesus, is because they claim that this God in the Bible was a demigod. It was an extraterrestrial controller of the world, and we were worshiping this aspect and taught no false idols before me. It actually means that this was an egotistical entity that was controlling mankind and did not want us to awaken, and that the Garden of Eden itself is a true depiction of what occurred, that the reptile, or Satan, if you will, or the snake, was an actual, and this is where people can laugh all they want, but you've heard of the reptilians or lizard people. If that's true, and there was a different walk of life form on this planet that had a favor towards humankind and wanted to help them, would not those people who were a part of that sector say, shame on you, you help the humans, we're going to depict you as evil? Meanwhile, it was trying to help them awaken from their slumber of control and sleep. So anyway, all this stuff is in the Gnostic teachings. Not that every Gnostic believes this, but a large, vast majority did. And what ended up getting put in the Bible is a whole different depiction from what the Gnostics believe took place and lived. And their stuff was hidden away until 1945, where the Dead Sea Scrolls have come into existence, as well as the Nag Hammadi texts that are now being a lot more brought into the mainstream. And they're depicting a lot of this possible truth that this God that's discussed in the Bible isn't God like we think, God is, this white man with a beard in the sky or some human form of God. It's just God might be in my terms, I'm kind of like you. I do think there is something, but it's not anything like we depict it to be. It's just a maybe omnipresent spark of source in the universe that has a massive amount of consciousness that just created the whole thing and said, let it all be whatever it is. I want to experience myself in human form. And it's very just hands off. And whatever happens over eons of time has happened. And then in the Bible, of course, you have humankind who doesn't know what extraterrestrials are, calling them angels and gods, and
can't really conceive of another planet.
All the different, all these different Greek mythology aspects. Where do you think it all comes from? I mean, humans are created, but there might be some facts to all this stuff. And it's just, a lot of people will say, if they're very, very religious, oh, that's so blasphemous. How dare you? Well, I'm not trying to be offensive. It's just, you have to. It's okay if you don't want to look at it and you have a faith. I don't judge anybody for that place at all. But my belief set and my mindset has to take me down those channels to say what makes the most sense. I'll discover everything that I can. I'll look at it, make my own informed decisions, and I won't judge anybody else for having a different point of view. But I feel like you should at least look at it. So to your point on the whole agnostic or atheist aspect, if you look at what I'm starting to find out about the Bible, it kind of makes more sense that the God discussed in there isn't the God that we think. That's mind-blowing in itself. So at the
very least, we can say that the stories included were chosen and others were not. And they were all maybe written around the same time. And it's like, why do we take the gospel of X versus this other guy? This was just testimony written and therefore put into the book.
It's no different than now. There's many different people today that want to tell only a certain side of the story. So they create the research, the study, they fund it to tell what they want told. It's no different. I mean, humans aren't that different from 2,000 years ago. What do I want them to believe? And then we'll tell them that's what they should believe. So it's not that different.
Well, the thing that started all this actually came back to my mind. Thanks for jumping in and filtering until I got it back.
You're all good.
Was the idea of the afterlife and heaven and hell in general, just these conceptual things is like eternal punishment or eternal reward. And so if we go from the idea of we are all just energy beings temporarily in flesh suits and then we go back to being energy beings. If, in the context of, say, like a video game, we play a character, we know more than that character, but that character only knows X, Y, and Z, whatever we train it to learn, being this operator of the game. So that's one type of analogy. But afterwards, we go back to being energy, and we can look back on everything we did and go, oh God, oh fuck me, why did I do that? It's this. I think what hell is conceptually is the idea of we awaken from our experience and we go, wow, I did a lot of awful things and I feel bad about it. It's just carrying that guilt and that awakened understanding of how badly we screwed up into our energy form, so to speak. And to the degree that we try and do things the best we can and help the most people and cause no harm and make the world a better place, we can be proud of ourselves afterwards and go, I did that pretty good. I made a few mistakes, but you know what? I tried. And that's kind of how I conceive of the afterlife and the eternal punishment is we're going to wake up one day and look back on what we did, and we're not going to be happy about doing it poorly or hurting people. That's kind of my conception of the afterlife, so to speak.
Yeah, there is a belief set that says that at some point, every soul, spirit, consciousness, if that's what we are, will elevate to one point or another. So it could take eons and eons and eons of time, but that we'll all consciously get back to the source, if you want to call it that. And, I'll just briefly say, I think if I had to depict my understanding of heaven or hell in a much more the basic layman's terms that I can, is that whenever you die, if you have a spirit, a soul, if you believe that, or if anybody believes that at your essence, you are this soul inside of a flesh suit, what you live and how you live constitutes where you go next. Not necessarily that you're being judged or put into it, but if you are of a light, goodness, heart, care, compassion, you're going to be surrounded by that kind of energy. It's that frequency aspect, perhaps, of where you go. If you are a dark entity, evil, trying to always get under, lie, thieve, steal, you're going to find yourself around that. Like attracts like. That's the whole cause and effect aspect, to where heaven and hell could have been depicted that way. And the only missing piece is that some Orthodox church decided to say, well, you're going to be judged if you don't live this way, therefore you're going to go to hell if you don't. And it created this whole fear component, and fear, as you, I'm sure, know, is a great way to control the masses. So it's very intriguing to me. Yeah. So fear can be good too, but.
Well, it can be. I mean, fear, like I say, fear, anxiety, pain, these are your friends from a biological perspective. Anxiety, thinking about the future and what could go wrong. You make plans, you prevent disaster. Fear. Saber-toothed tiger, run. To stay alive, exactly. Procreate. Pain. Oh, that hurts. Maybe I should clean the wound so it doesn't get infected. Before we knew what an infection was, we knew what pain was. Pain tells you, there's kids that are born without pain receptors. The pain does not register in their brain. They will run around on a broken leg flopping and the bone snapped in half, and they're happy as a jaybird running around, and you can't control them. You can't stop them from hurting themselves.
I've seen that. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's a real thing. So like, imagine you think you want to live a pain-free life. You will die very young because you won't know your leg is broken, and you'll just walk around on it until it kills you. So these things are the worst things in life and necessary for life. It's a strange connection there. I was just thinking, I just glanced down. I think in this show portion, after we did the pre-chat, we've already been going for like an hour, and I want to get you a dream interpretation at some point, before we run you out of time. So maybe, did you want to shift gears and get into that?
I'm fine with it. Yeah, this has been great conversation, but I
could go all day.
Let's go ahead. Yeah, me too. But let's go ahead and shift, and we'll talk some dreams here and get into some other aspects. Thank you for allowing me the time to discuss the other things that I'm so passionate about too. I don't get many opportunities to have these kinds of conversation, so I appreciate you giving me the platform to be able to do it.
Oh, and I love talking to people, and this is like, in the beginning I didn't. I was like, okay, dreams, let's go. Very, very awkward, stiff, didn't know what I was doing. And then I realized, if I talk to people, I'll probably get a better interpretation. And now I just talk to people because they're fascinating. Like, what do you think? Really? Tell me more.
Humans are a fascinating species. How can we, not want to dissect ourselves? I can't help it. It's just me. So.
Oh yeah, for sure. So you'd mentioned recurring dreams. We can get into that already. But did you have a specific one that happened, say recently, or it's always up to the dreamer? What do you bring me? I'll work with what you got.
Yeah. So I have a couple good examples here, and they're the most reoccurring one that seems to happen on at least a monthly reoccurrence is
Okay.
this aspect of travel. I'm usually in an airport or in a city somewhere.
Okay.
And these are non-lucid. Typically, I'm not aware that I'm dreaming. It just feels very, very real. And I cannot get home. So some examples.
Oh, wait, let me stop you there. Sorry.
Sure.
I want to get into the, let me see. How do I explain this? I do the big picture second. What I generally try to do is give me the most recent experience of that dream you can remember, beginning to end. We kind of dial in what that represents to you, and then we can start creating links to all the other instances of it. If that makes sense. I don't want to cut you off or direct the process too much. But,
No, you are fine.
But if some people start telling me the story of why all their dreams are similar, we're going to get to that. But kind of put one dream first to get an idea of what we examine one apple, and then we look at the class of apples, so to speak.
So let me give you this one specific example then. So I'm in an airport. I don't know what airport it is, but it's a large airport. And I have this feeling of I'm going to be late for my flight, trying to find what gate I'm at. And in the dream, I am going down many, many corridors. You could, I guess, just paint a picture of different terminals. So you go down the wrong terminal, you're realizing, oh my God, I'm in the wrong place. I got to turn all the way around and get back to where I'm going. So I proceed to turn around and get back to where I think I'm going. Meanwhile, I find out I'm in the wrong place again. All the while, somehow time, it seems to stand still, but it's really not, because I have this consistent feeling of anxiety of I'm going to miss this flight. I cannot find this flight. So that's really the crux of this dream. And it's a constant feeling of anxiety and stress trying to find this gate for my flight that I never get to. This dream has occurred numerous times. I want to say at least a dozen times that I've had this dream, probably in just the last 2 years. Again, almost a monthly occurrence. So I don't know what it represents, what it means. I have some theories behind it, but that's the crux of that dream.
Okay, so that is typically my step one, just shut up and listen. And then I like to go back and try and pick it apart a little bit. Not pick it apart, fill in gaps. Try and put me looking out your eyes in the dream as much as possible. So in this specific dream, how recent was it? A week or two ago, or last night?
Yeah, 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago?
Yep, 2 weeks ago.
Just checking. Does that make a difference? I don't know. Maybe it does. The first thing you can remember is being in the airport, in a terminal, and it's large. So did it seem like a typical large airport that you've been through, or abnormally huge? Like this
abnormally
is
huge.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not a small airport, and the dream begins with, if you want to kind of call it the like the central hub of this airport. It's massive. I don't even see the other end of it. It's just a feeling of never ending is kind of how it feels, and it's not an airport I'm familiar with. I mean, it's just a large airport. It's not any one in specific. It has a futuristic feel to it and look to it. A lot of edges and steel and glass, very, very open feeling. But yeah, the concourse, if you will, is where it usually begins, which is like the center point of, okay, where am I going?
Okay. Are there any other people there?
Tons of people.
Okay.
Yeah, people everywhere. No one's paying me any mind, though. No one's paying me any attention. I can see them everywhere, and everyone's going about their normal business, and I'm just frantically thinking, where do I go? Now, I can give you more whenever you're ready, because there's some other interesting pieces of this.
Oh, for sure. No, that's what I want. Exactly. All that stuff. So at this moment you arrive, and there's people kind of moving all around you in different directions, and no one's really looking at you, paying any attention to you. You're taking in this massive, apparently never ending, giant concourse that you cannot even see the other end of.
Correct.
And very futuristic looking. So it's got a future orientation, which is interesting with the idea of anxiety, also a very future oriented emotion. We were just saying. And there's people everywhere. So you're not, so that's interesting too. Why? Who knows? We're going to get there maybe. But I ask because sometimes people don't think about that until they're like, until I mention it and they go, no, actually nobody, me alone in this giant place, completely lost. That's a different kind of experience. So we just get the idea. Okay, there are other people. There's a busy central hub and it looks like other people know where they're going. They're moving with purpose. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Correct.
Sometimes that can be relevant too. The idea that, how are you imagining yourself positioned among other people you've put in this environment? You don't know where you're going, but it looks like they do. All of them. So much so that they are focused on their goal and they're not even paying any attention to you.
That is correct.
Yeah. I don't know if you had something to add. I cut you off.
Well, not necessarily cut me off. So that the next phase of this, if you will, or step that confuses the hell out of me is your natural tendency, at least as I travel a lot, is to pull up your smartphone and say, okay, where am I going? Nothing works. So I reference this routinely and I'm pulling my phone up and it doesn't want to work. It just will not function. And in different variations of this dream, so there's been other iterations of it where different people have been involved. I haven't started at the airport. I've been trying to get to the airport and it's the same thing. Nothing works. The GPS won't work. And it's, well, where do you go and how do you get there? And it's this constant, well, let me pull up this GPS. And it's just not there. It will not work. It will not function. It's like does not compute. So back to in
this specific dream, that's kind of the next phase you're in. Maybe not the direct center, but you're in the middle where you can go any direction. People are moving all around you and you don't know where to go. So the first thing you do is try and access a device to help you find your path.
What gate, what terminal am I at? And when I go to find that information doesn't exist. The phone is in my hand. I can see it.
Okay.
I can reference it. It's not like it's not there. It is there. It doesn't work. And I'm thinking, why the hell isn't this working? I mean, is the app down? It's not giving me a gate terminal number or a gate number. So upon not having it work and realizing what time it is and I'm going to be, late for the flight, I just begin to move into the direction that I believe that my plane or the gate that I'm trying to get to is going to be.
Okay. Kind of a best guess situation.
Yeah, kind of like how I'll equate it to is, I fly a certain airline. And I feel like, okay, well, let me go look for where those types of planes are, that brand of a plane. So I see mostly those brands of planes and go that direction.
Okay.
Just assuming that that's the way to go. If my phone's not going to tell me where to go, I'm going to make some educated guesses on where to go.
Okay. So that is also interesting too. The idea of the device functions itself. Mm-hmm. The phone turns on. It's not dead. It's not a brick. It's not completely useless. It's just useless for this specific thing you need.
Super frustrating as well, too, because I probably in the dream look at it, I don't know, 50 times. Like, come on, show me. And I get nothing out of it. And all the while, of course, there's more franticness happening as I'm like, I am not finding this. This plane is not going to wait forever for me to get to it.
Yeah, for sure. So if we were to, and this can be fuzzy. I know with my own dreams, it's like I'll have an idea. I was at a place, I did a thing. What was it? One snippet of a dream. Or was this someone else's dream? This might even actually be from an episode. I think this might have been from another guy. He was in a car and there was something about a pit of lava and they were going to drive into it. I think this was a guy telling me his dream. I get those confused, but he couldn't tell me anything else about that. Why is he in the car? What does that look like? Just this road looked like it was going to go into the lava and and then the dream transitioned to another point and he couldn't tell me much about it. And it was just that snippet. So why did I say that? As much as possible, I try and get chronological and then what? And then what? And it may not be possible. You may just have this tumble of images as I looked here and there and everywhere. And that was the experience. But if you can, do you remember reaching the end of that? So you saw, a similar brand of plane. So there's some indication what you're looking for might be over there. At least it looks like similar enough that it gives you an idea of where to go. You go there and you look, but it's not. And do you remember that experience and choosing a different path?
Very, very, very well. So again, this is more the frustrating part is I get to a part of the airport that I believe is where I need to be. And here's the strange part too. There's no communication. Like I don't ever remember in this dream ever conversing with an individual like a gate agent or anybody who says you're in the wrong place. It's a feeling that I get. Nobody tells me. It's a feeling. I am not in the right place. Then the feeling is you need to go to the other side of the airport. You're in a complete wrong location.
Okay.
So I'm thinking, okay, great. This is not good. I don't know how I'm going to get across this huge airport once again to a different location that I need to be at. And again, there's no conversation that takes place. It's just a feeling of intuition of this is the wrong place. Okay, now I know where I have to go. I'm going to go this way. So I go to the other opposite side of the airport. And again, all the while, it feels very begrudging, if you will, almost like you're moving through like molasses, where you're trying to go as fast as you possibly can, but your legs don't want to keep up. You're anchored down is kind of how it feels. Because you're like, I know I can move faster than this. Why am I not moving faster than this? Is the airport this large or am I moving this slow? And that's where I'll pause for right now.
No, that's very good too. So, and that's a great detail, something I might not have thought to ask, and very glad you volunteered because that is a unique kind of experience. As opposed to, what am I trying to say? Say dreams of someone where like, I decided to go to the other end of the terminal and suddenly I was floating above the heads of everyone and it took me there lickety split. That's a different kind of experience. This is one of those very much, let's say if we're to try to put it into how does this feeling relate to experience in real life? And you can tell me if this, we're kind of, we blend the, this is where my abstract, welcome to the ride. This is where my abstract brain gets going really, tangents and whatnot. There's
a ton of friction. I'm moving against the grain is how it feels. Like it's just not.
Yeah. Like fighting a current. Like, and I know, I think everybody knows that feeling of struggling so hard and you're accomplishing nothing. And it's very metaphorical of slogging through difficult situations in life where it's just a grind. So there's something of that in there. I don't know if that inspired a thought.
Yeah. And I am moving, but it's a lot of work is what it is how I would explain it. 'Cause it's not like I'm just stuck and not moving in this dream. I am transgressing it, or I am moving forward, but very slow. And I'm trying to move faster. And I know biologically and physically I should be able to move faster, but I'm not. So that's very, very frustrating. It adds to the anxiety. It adds to the frustration. All the while, I'm again checking my phone, trying to see if it's working. It's not working. And there's this big feeling of regret building inside of me that I'm not going to be able to find this damn plane.
And no, it never crossed your mind to stop any of the people hustling by and ask them.
It doesn't, no. And that's the irony is I don't recall, at least in this dream, ever saying, hey, help me. I need some help.
Yeah, and you mentioned no gate agents were present. There's what am I trying to say? Alone in a crowd. There's a very sense of being on your own to figure this out, as if other people can't help, or it doesn't even occur to you that they would be able to.
Correct.
You're having representations of missing authority figures in terms of. The gate agent should know that's their job. They don't tell me what to do, but they're an authority in what gate am I at, because they work there and they know what the flight is and the times. That's my concept of the authority of competence. You've got no guides to tell you, and other people on about their own business. It never even occurs to you to ask them. So you've got a I'm going to figure this out on my own type of thing going on, or maybe you feel obligated to, but speaking of awareness and self-examination, it's like in this dream, you're not thinking, should I ask someone? And you decide not to. It never occurs to you.
Nope. Just that I should know. And for whatever reason why I can't find it out. So it's increasingly frustrating. And no one assists me. No one comes up to me. I don't go up to somebody else. Yep, there's no volunteers, and I'm not finding anybody. I'm just increasingly starting to realize I'm going to miss the flight.
Yeah, that and there's it's interesting. You mentioned the timelessness too of like there's no sense of the passage of time in as such, but time is not waiting for you. You got to make a decision. You got to.
Way to put it. Yes,
Yeah.
because it feels like forever in this dream. It feels like forever and ever and ever is going on, and I'll glance at the clock or my watch, and it's like time moved 10 minutes, and I'm like, okay, I still can make it. I still can make it. But it feels like it should be a hell of a lot more time that has passed that doesn't pass. So it continues to give you this, almost the best way to describe it is false hope. If I'm going to catch this plane still, I'm going to catch this plane, because you're thinking, well, this isn't possible. How can it still be this time? I'm nowhere closer to this finding this plane, but yet I know it takes off. I never have like a time given to me. These occur in the evening. I'll say that. So these aren't like early mornings. It's later in the evening. It's starting to get dusk outside. There's that aspect happening. I can sense and see. It's not dark, pitch black, but I'd call it twilight-ish looking outside. And again, I'm like, it's not dark. So you're looking around and it still looks the same. The time is moving very slow, but it feels like you've been in it forever.
For sure. And I'm glad you mentioned that too. That's something I forget to ask sometimes of like, time of day, lighting sources. Sometimes there's like, there was no sun, but it was daytime. Fair enough. Or the sun was behind the clouds, or it's definitely late evening, long shadows. As much as these things are unique to everybody, there are some common cultural understandings of sunrise and sunset, periods of transition, dusk and dawn. And very often the lateness of the evening, the twilight heading into darkness, the end of the day, the time is running out for accomplishing things. That can be very powerful association. So you've got this, I got a destination. I can't get there fast enough. I can't move as quickly as I'd like to. The failure of movement in dreams, there's a whole chapter on that in several of the books I've worked with, but a lot of times from what I've come to understand and people I've talked to it's there's something in us that we're expressing a failure to make the best use of our own abilities in a way that moves us towards a goal as quickly as we'd like to. That also relates to, say, running away from monsters in dreams and feeling attracted to it, as if you're slowly being pulled back as hard as you run away.
I've had that too.
Very, very similar type of thing. Or you're moving, but the thing's catching up. You can't, and that's can be all kinds of stuff. It can be threats that are looming. It can be consequences for choices that are going to catch up to you. So many different ways to interpret it, but it's very much related to the concept of movement and the ability to deploy movement at need for a specific cause, as simple as I am walking through molasses, not as fast as I'd like, and the bad thing is catching me. So for this one, the bad thing is I'm going to be late. You're moving towards it, but it keeps moving away from you in a way. Also interesting too, and I wrote pendulum, just my own thought. You went with your best guess to completely one wrong end of the terminal. You get there and go, oh, this isn't it. And then you realize I went completely, it's all the way on the other side. So in some ways, this isn't an indecisiveness, as in, and it isn't arbitrary either. I'm seeing it as probably something I do too. And I feel that's why I feel like I might be onto something here, is this idea of seeing the full scope of the thing. I've gone from one end to the other. I've seen everything. I'm going to cover the bases. I'm going to examine it as thoroughly as possible. And then I will know what I need is somewhere in between these 2 points. There's nothing beyond that. This is the limits. I've mapped the boundaries. That is a part of the process of understanding where you are and how to get where you're going. I don't know if any of this resonates with you.
Oh, you're very much in the same vein, I think, and you're hitting on some key points that I hadn't even thought of. I had some belief into what this might mean, and it's kind of starting to go down where you said, but you're adding a lot more context. I'll say one more thing, though, about that. This airport is circular, so it's not necessarily an end-to-end. So I get to the other end, and guess what? It ain't there.
It ain't there either.
So I begin to traverse every like hallway that I can find. So I'm like, okay, process of elimination. It's not here, it's not there. I'm going to go around the other side. And again, there's this fear of, okay, now I'm really in trouble. I've wasted all this time on two ends of the spectrum. I've still got more lanes or aisles to go down, and no one's helping me. I'm not finding it. Yet this time is still moving relatively slowly. I'm going to get there. The plane probably won't be there, but I'm going to try anyways, and at least find out that I got to the right place, even if the plane is left. So it never gets to that point, though. At some point around this time in the dream, it transitions, or I awake. Sometimes I'll fall back asleep, and it'll continue in the same form or fashion to where I never find the plane. I never get on the plane. And there's this constant fear of not getting home. So that's kind of how the dream eventually dematerializes. It's a very round, big airport with different, you can call it like a hub again, or a spider, if you will, with all these different terminals that go down.
Yeah.
And after about 2 or 3 terminals or 4 terminals of not finding what it is I'm trying to get to, I eventually realize I'm not finding this plane. But I wake up and I'm like, oh, damn, that dream again?
Yeah.
What the heck? Yeah,
For
why am I
sure.
so twisted and turned around? So that's one of my more, again, reoccurring dreams that just frustrates the hell out of me. But also, I have my own interpretation as to what it could mean, but you're helping me put it together here with a lot more context, I think.
Yeah. Well, that's actually probably the next. So we go back through it again, and I think we probably don't need to nail every twist and turn of everywhere you checked. I don't know. That's going to give us more information than we've already got. Just getting to the idea that it's a giant roundish terminal or a concourse with all the terminals spoking off and almost like a wheel. That's interesting too. And
Yes.
that you pick one and you pick the other. Now you've got the diameter. Then you go around the circumference, and you're this kind of methodical search. I'm going to cover the bases. This not the best analogy, but the thoroughness of the search, and the idea that there's an intensity and a desire to accomplish something that's it's being frustrated. Time is running out. You're not able to move as quickly as you'd like. You're being held back by some invisible force, so to speak, or you're not able to use your skills as well as you'd like, physical movement wise, or represented that way.
Technology won't work.
Yeah, no, that too is that the tools at your display. You're not only your body doesn't work, the tools you rely on to get you where you're going,
Correct.
useless. And all the while, this frustrated goal, this time is running out, this anxiety of missing the flight, and just to cap it all off, this idea of not getting home. You're trying to get home. I had never
Correct.
asked you where you were going. That's great.
Yep.
So we do all that, and that's why I listen once. We get so much more on the deep dive, the second pass. And then I like to stop and say, all during that, did stuff occur to you before I start throwing more suggestions than I already have and offering my own 2 cents? Because a lot of times people go, oh, let me tell you something. I just thought of what was happening to me 2 weeks ago, and here's why it relates. So I did want to jump back into that for 2 seconds. Do you remember what you were in the middle of, either in the middle of, had just recently completed, or were looking forward to in terms of stress about 2 weeks ago when this dream last happened?
Well, I mean, outside of my constant travel, which is routine, I'm on a plane every other week,
Very
pretty
strong
much.
iconography there, yes.
So there's that piece where there's the unconscious, subconscious, I guess, overlay of, I travel a lot. But the irony is, I haven't missed a flight in 20 years. I show up. I've got my times pretty well timed out from my local airport in Cleveland. I can get to it pretty much 15 minutes before that plane boards, but I know exactly the way in. I don't have to I know what gate my flight's going to almost be out of, because I don't even have to look at my phone. I will look at it just to make sure, but usually it's the same flight, same gate, all the time from that airport. So there's not a lot of stress from the travel aspect, but there is absolute stress, I think, that I put on myself in terms of taking care of my daily corporate functions, also starting off and getting this entrepreneurial ventures going that I care so much about, from knowledge and sharing knowledge, and always being at both ends of that spectrum is what I could say is more the stress in my life, probably not a lot in work, like corporate work necessarily. It's trying to make that stay together while I'm doing the other things that I'm doing. But I don't know how that correlates into, what would cause this dream to occur 2 weeks ago, because I can't recall anything specific 2 weeks ago that was at that point in time that would have caused this dream to occur then, other than, again, the constant, I hate to say rat race, because I love the work that I do on both sides. It's just, it's a lot to juggle it all and keep it all together, of course.
For sure. It is interesting too, that you've taken something you're actually very good at, getting to your flight on time. And in your mind, you're imagining, okay, here's a thing. And it doesn't matter what the thing is. Like, the thing is, could have been anything, but here's the thing that you do so well. It is stress-free. Now imagine you just cannot get it done. Something that is well practiced, something you've dialed into a T. You've done all the searching and you've found the right flight. I mean, in your mind, you would think this iconography would be representative of natural success. Look at how easy I can do something, but you've actually flipped it on its head in your brain for some reason and said, imagine something almost second nature, a well-practiced skill that you just can't pull off. Something about that. Do you have a moment?
No, I was just saying that there is, oh man, I mean, something just hit me in terms of the ability to do things well. So maybe that is part of the depiction of the meaning inside of this dream, is that I need to understand, that I'm not very well versed perhaps in these aspects. This is all new ventures for me. So something that I am naturally good at, maybe part of the fear that could be being portrayed in the dream is I'm so efficient when it comes to the travel. I'm so used to doing that. When I'm put into that zone and it's something totally different portraying to it. I mean, I'm trying to draw a conclusion to maybe it could be the startup, this entrepreneurial venture, my community, my brand, my book, all that I'm doing out there that is unknown, but I should recognize that it's not a problem. Like, I'm naturally good at podcasting. I like to speak. I like to be in front of people. So there could be some kind of correlation there between those two things, because I shouldn't be afraid, but in the dream I am. And in the dream I shouldn't have a problem with this. Why do I have a problem with this? So I don't know. There is that overlay.
And there's definitely a seeking and not finding. You're imagining not that the struggle is going to pay off, but that you're going to reach the end, the waking up, the end of the dream, whatever that means, and never have succeeded in your mission. There might be something there. I mean, since it came to your mind, it's probably connected. Whatever, these spontaneous associations are fantastic, but there is often difficulty in translating skills, and that there's also facility in translating skills. If you learn one thing, you put it in a new context, but there is an adaptation that has to take place. And so perhaps if this is what I'm reading or hearing from you, there is some concern about successful adaptation of previously existing skills into this new context. And in your waking mind, you're struggling a bit to find the square pegs and round holes, so to speak, but and vice versa. Get them all where they need to go, and probably not that it's more of a perceptual thing of questioning ability. What am I trying to say? Ability to succeed, uncertainty about whether or not you are accurately, best practice, successfully translating those skills. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, because I can tell you that, I'm a part of a few mastermind groups. I get a lot of perspective from different groups that I pay to be a part of, and, call it life coaching if you want to call it that, but it's not really life coaches. It's great people coming together to try to help people who have goals on their trajectory towards hitting those goals. Mm-hmm. And what I've talked to you about today is truly my life passion. I want to find a way to make it a full-time thing. I love my corporate role, but I can see the opportunity that one day it won't be there. Either I'll have to choose to have it and probably be hollow inside, which I can't live with. Yeah. I have to make a transition, and it's very unknown. And there's a fear of that. And I have people telling me, hey, are you doing the right thing? Like, hey, you have done corporate restaurants all your life. Why don't you take your knowledge and consult? Why don't you at least take this idea of ungraduating and use it for business, like get into business conversations and talk with, executives that are in your space and give them the knowledge. I don't know how to do all those things. I mean, I could figure it out. Of course, I'm not really afraid of trying to, but what I'm trying to say is I don't feel in my heart and in my mind and my intention that that's where it's supposed to go, because I don't want to be paid to basically help people make millions of dollars more. I want to be paid, if there is a currency involved in doing this, to help people feel better about themselves. And yes, you can find that through money, but money is just a vehicle. You can also find a lot of dead ends with money as well too. So it's a very much a crossroads at my point in life. And I think in some way, because the dreams reoccurred so often, again, it's been over a dozen, maybe even 24 times now. It's something in regards to what I've been going through in the last 2.5, 3 years as I've been thinking through this transition.
That's what I was going to ask you too, is when the dream started. So it's been about 2.5, 3-ish years.
Yeah.
And that's been the time frame where you've been looking at maybe where you've been, what are you doing now, and where do you want to go? And so,
roughly,
yeah. Because there's a lot of iconography that pops into my head about can't find my flight. Well, what is flight? It's travel. You've got a destination you're trying to get to, but you can't even put yourself on the vehicle it's supposed to take you there. You can't, and there's something very functional in that process too, of arriving at the place where the mode of transportation takes you where you're supposed to go, and you can't bridge the gap. You can't get to where you're going because you can't find what's going to carry you to that end result. It's going somewhere with that. So if you're looking at all of these things, the idea of, first, you may not know what your destination is. So this dream may be saying, and may be recurring, is like, you can't find the plane because you can't conceive of the destination. Yeah, like if you knew where you were going, you would know what plane would take you there. But that comes with the idea of, and it's not that you don't know a general direction. You might be like, well, I need to go southwest. Just pick a direction. But you're kind of not sure which plane is going to take you there, and not sure which city in the Southwest you want to go to, because that's the place that's got the thing you need. There might be, so you're looking all over this terminal trying to find, like I was saying, it was the second part to my thought I'm trying to get back, but maybe, I don't know, you can think.
Well, you've already enlightened me on that aspect of it. You can't go somewhere, well, theoretically speaking, on a plane unless you know your destination. So to your point, you're right. I may have a general direction, but telling an airline, take me to the Southwest or the Northeast, they're going to say, give me a destination. And I'm going to say, well, I don't know. I just want to go.
Jump out halfway, take a parachute and see what happens.
And listen, that is generally how I operate though. Like, I have a general direction, and I'm not a very structured individual. I like to allow things to unfold as they need to unfold. Yeah. Yep, and that could be I didn't think about that. That could be a deeper inner meaning of that dream that continuously reoccurs, that I can't find the plane because it won't take off unless it knows where it's going. I've never thought about that. I've just always associated it to, I got to get home, because in my waking life, that's what gets me home, is whenever I'm traveling week to week, I hop the plane, it gets to the airport I'm going to for business, and then I come back and then I drive home. So in your waking moments, you associate that kind of travel to coming home. But if you really didn't know where you were going, you couldn't tell them a latitude, longitude, or a city name, they're not going to take you there.
Yeah, and the idea of going home too is it's a place, but it's also a feeling. It's where you feel comfortable, you feel at home. It's where you live. All of these things, and they can be physical and metaphorical. But it's the idea of the ideal future is the place you will feel at home with. In a sense, what am I trying to say? There's more to dial in on that, but the idea of you cannot imagine being at home with a future of just following the same corporate path you've done for 20 some odd years. That's your destination. Your home is not down that road. So now you're looking at, well, where is it? It's over here somewhere. I know it's over here, but dialing in exactly what that looks like.
Yes.
Might be.
Yeah, A very great point too. And I love the company I work for. I love my boss. He asks me, not routinely, but every often, so what do you want to be whenever you grow up? Even though I'm 41, and in my space, I'm still very young for
I want to be
the
a
job that I
spaceman.
do. Yeah. But I always tell them, you know what, for the first time in my life, I don't know. And I've been very open and honest with the employers that I have that work for me, or that I work for, and they work for me too. I guess we're a partnership. But for the first time in my entire corporate career, I don't know where I'm going, because I've gotten to a point where the next position is COO, and I don't foresee that being the place. So I'm okay with obviously the unknown of whatever comes next, but it's also uncomfortable for me because I've had this linear path, this corporate path all my life,
Yeah.
and that may be changing at some point in the future.
And I think that's the first thing most of us do before we make a change. What do they say? First, you realize there's a problem, and then you can address it. So there's maybe some sense of dissatisfaction of like, I can only do the same thing for so long. I need a new challenge. I need to reformulate or use these skills in a new way. So we realize dissatisfaction. It doesn't have to be anything wrong with what you did. It may be perfectly ethical and otherwise satisfying and productive and useful, and people are happy with you and you're skilled at it. And you're like, I've done that a lot. I had the same meal for dinner 20 years in a row. It's time to change it up, put something new on my plate, because sometimes we just need some variety. And that can be, and so a lot of your dream is feelings based, too, a feeling of running out of time. And that happens to a lot of us with, say, midlife. I'm 45 now too. I'm just about 2 years ago, I switched over. I'm going to be a dream wizard and publish books. I worked 20 years in inpatient emergency psychiatric. I'm like, I don't want to do that anymore. But great experience. Don't regret any of it. Very proud of my work, but did I want to do that until I died? Not so much. I was going somewhere with that. Changing patterns. And so you've got this. Okay. The other thing I was going to say, getting back to other stuff, there's also in your general personality, a very thorough searching nature. I mean, this whole idea of a spherical place, it's bounded. There's only so much to know, even if it's immense beyond comprehension, and you're going to get the circumference, you're going to look at the diameter, you're going to check all the little narrow hallways. And that goes to our, I think both of our tendency to be seekers after knowledge and understanding. And,
Yes.
And you weren't actually interesting too. So there's no authority figures there. You're on your own. And in life, I think we both are. There's a lot of people I look at, what have they said, but I'm not looking at anyone as that guy's got all the answers. Not only that, you can't even ask anyone else. This is a decision only you can make. There's no interaction with the other people. You're existing with them. There's nothing wrong with them. They're not stupid. They're not ignorant. They're on their own path, but they can't tell you where to go. And you're not going to get that answer from authority figures, from people walking by on the street on their own path. You're going to have to figure it out on your own, in a way. Yeah. I don't know. I was going somewhere.
And then and that's making a lot of good sense. And then there's always that possibility, as I'm listening to you and drawing the conclusions here, that the time is moving slower than what it feels. That could be maybe a sense in the fact that I never do catch the plane or take off necessarily, or get home in the dream, might just be an evolving point of where I'm at right now. The fact that I don't miss the plane, or it crashes or something like that, none of that stuff's occurring. It's just simply stating that, hey, you have time. You feel like time is running out, but perhaps it's not. And you're the one who's putting all the pressure on because you're trying to get home, and you don't need to apply yourself quite that much. Maybe it's a kind of take it as it comes. I don't know. I mean, that's something that
I was going to say, I think it's
I never see the plane leave. Like, I just never find it.
Never miss it. That's a good point. Yeah.
I never miss it. Yeah. So it's like,
well, in the grand scheme of things, we got two things working against us. We're going to die someday, and things take as long as they take. So sometimes you're in the middle of a process, and God, you just want it done, but it's just not done. You just haven't arrived there yet. Fair enough. And that's the feeling of stuck in a forever time. And you're also looking at like, I don't have forever to get this done. So this feels like it's taking forever, and I'm worried I'm not going to get it done in enough time. Sometimes that's what we need for motivation. It's like, well, maybe work a little harder. Maybe look at this again. And so what is happening with recurrent dreams? In my estimation, my current working theory, and some other people might agree or not, but I believe it's this. We come up with iconic representations of a specific type of experience, a specific problem that we haven't an experience that we want to resolve or a problem we want an answer to. And so it goes, it's this again. You remember that? This is still happening. Think about it again. Think about it deeper, conceptualize it in this way. Sometimes if we look at it again from different angles, it's our brain. It's just like we try and worry through a problem while we're awake. We look at it from as many different angles as we can, and we don't quite let it go based on how determined we are to get an answer until we've figured out what to do. And sometimes we just make a decision and go, you know what, I don't know what to do. I'm just going to see what happens. So in your dream, you take off, I need to just start looking. I need to do something to make this happen, to get me a better idea to make some progress, to get a better idea of what I'm dealing with here. It's so I was getting into the whole idea of feelings, but there's a lot of feelings in this dream, anxiety and fear, and like you're gonna miss something, like time is running out, like you're fighting resistance, having trouble using these skills to move you in a direction. So there isn't a lot of now dreams are often full of feelings, but there isn't a lot of physical references. That's not what I was trying to say, other than the resistance of movement, which is more a frustrational element or abilities translation type of thing. But what was I trying to say about physical? Like a lot of people, not a lot of people I've talked to in the past and other folks have more physical sensations in dreams in terms of different stuff. A lot of thoughts occurring, but they tend to, like, yours tends to be more in that emotional realm, if that makes sense. I'm not grabbing onto what I wanted to say, but there's something in there.
No, I do understand what you're saying. Yeah, there's not a lot of physicality in the dream other than this grainy feeling of friction and not being able to move as fast as I want.
Yeah. I think you might have froze up for the first time. Oh, goodness. Hope I don't lose you. My headphones back in.
Maybe I should jump out and jump back in, which is what I did. I waited for a while, and then I saw you split. I don't know what it was. It's no big deal, man.
Sometimes it sorts itself out. Sometimes it doesn't. I'll just make a little note. He'll chop that out like 5 minutes. No, I had to go to the bathroom anyway. Realized I need to let the dog out, and I should go too.
No, you're fine. I was just researching your podcast now on Apple, and I'm looking at all these episodes because I haven't had any time to listen to you. But I'm going to subscribe, follow, rate, and review you, all that good stuff. But yeah, you got some killer episodes on here, man. You got some that you go on 3 and 4 hours long. It looks like, holy crap,
4.5.
That's awesome.
I mean, I tell people 2 hours, and then I say, but I'll keep talking as long as you want to. You got more questions, you got more analyses, you want to share a thought or a perspective. But I think, in terms of what we've got going here, we seem to have taken a lot of the iconography and kind of dialed it in on the translation of skills from one successful area to another. The difficulty you may perceive you're having with that general concept of translating skills, something you feel like you should be good at, and you're being held back and you're running out of time. And it's all because likely, you haven't quite conceptualized the destination, what it's going to look like when you do it right. So
very true.
I think and that's the beauty about recurring dreams, is that if we've nailed something useful, these dreams will change. The next time you have this kind of dream, you're going to have a different experience in it. And you would want to look at what that difference is and what it means, meditate on it or whatnot, or not conversely, but alternative possibility. These dreams will continue in exactly this form until you kind of dial in what it looks like to arrive where you want to be. Where do you want to be? You got to decide what that looks like to have a successful conversion, and then you won't need the dream anymore. But until it's a constant concern, you're going to worry at it. And again, worry, fear, anxiety, yada, yada, being useful because you want to succeed, you have a fear of failure. If you just don't care, there's no fear. Fuck it. But
exactly.
But the capacity to worry is like, it keeps us focused on what is useful to our goals in general. So I would say, don't stress out as much as worry is just stressful, because it is, but that it's a normal process, that you're not actually doing anything wrong. You're in the process of choosing a destination. And when you do, it'll all work out, right? That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, it's so true and funny. It's my own advice that I give people, is that I can sit here on the surface and say all these things, but I'm human and I have these same concerns subconsciously, unconsciously too. I know in the waking state, of life, I am pretty calm, pretty cool, pretty collected, know it'll all work itself out, have a destination, know, I think, where I want to take it in terms of a conceptual idea, but it's not all the way to fruition yet. So I try to not stress over it. But underneath the surface, it's impossible to, because I care, to not have some concern and some worry. So I had a feeling that the dream was about something like that, but this has absolutely helped pull apart a lot more layers in terms of my analysis of it, and now it makes a whole lot more sense, and the whole reoccurring aspect makes sense too, because it literally has been for the last 3 or so years, and that's about the time that I got this current promotion to where I sit today, and that clock started to tick. Okay, what's next? And then the last 2 years I began to really take the steps, so I am manifesting this thought into reality right now, but it hasn't fully landed yet. So there's that whole connection as well too.
And honestly, so there's my first assumption was, until you get a conceptualization of what success looks like, you may not lose this terminal dream of travel and failure to connect to your destination. That's one possibility. The other possibility is, until you create success and experience it and become comfortable with the idea that this is what I like, this is what I thought it would be, or something I am happy with it being, this fits my personal criteria of I did it right, I'm satisfied with the results in the process, you may keep having this type of dream as you figure out how to get to your destination. And you might start having, let's see, if you're not consulting authority figures or fellow travelers, so to speak, maybe add some of those components. It seems like you said you're in a master group of people who have succeeded, passing along their wisdom. Maybe bring this dream or the concept of how do I formulate what this looks like and know I'm doing it right by my own criteria. And maybe some of your other fellow travelers, more people at your level, also on their way somewhere else, and ask them their process. So maybe some of the missing things from your dream are like telling you to add those components. It might give you a better chance of success.
I remembered earlier, before we lost connection here, what it was we were talking about at the beginning, and you were saying system or something. It was human design. I was asking you if you had ever heard of the term human design.
Okay, yeah.
So it's relevant now to bring this up, I think, because I just finished this. It's kind of like a survey, but it's not a survey. So human design is based off of 88 days ahead of your birth date, and then the time of your birth date, location, and city. So all of that stuff gets put into a database, and don't ask me how the hell this works, but it takes your energetic sign at the time of birth, 88 days ahead of it. And just with that information alone, you get this spit out of like a reading of who you are, really, how you're wired. And I was talking to this individual that I went through this with, and it was very reaffirming in the sense of kind of how I'm talking to you with this path I'm on and knowledge, and it goes through everything in terms of your different chakras that are open or closed and channels. It's this great printout of data that's based off of your energetic state at the time, astrologically speaking, of your birth. And it's so freaky. I loved it. She was telling me how some people were so weirded out that they'll actually stop it and say, I don't know how you know all this about me, but I think I'm done here. I was like, give me more, give me more, give me more, give me more. But this human design aspect, I had never heard of it until I came across this individual. And she was, going through some of this, interpretation of the knowledge that I'm seeking is for other people, and that I need to wait for invitations to come into my life and not be so caught up on always trying to go in different directions. It's wait for the yes, yes, yes. This feels right. So what I'm trying to do with this whole beginning of something new for me is pay attention to the people that are doing like things, and wait for invitations to have perhaps even some partnerships or some collaborations to kind of get my feet into it. Because again, it's this idea of being 25 years in a corporate structure where I've had a team around me who does everything that I need them to do. Granted, from a ground level up to where I'm at now, I didn't have a team constantly, but I'm used to structure. You get promoted, you take on more, but you have resources, as you know, from stopping and now doing something totally different. It's very much not the case. You're solo. You're trying to get yourself into what makes sense.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was asking you about human design because I think you'd find it relatively fascinating if you look into it, because it's supposedly, energetically speaking, when we come into this physical incarnation, it's like a life path. And if you're curious to know about yourself and more about the inner workings of your life, I'd say check into human design, because it's been fascinating and kind of enlightening for me too. So sorry for the digression.
Cool. No. And that is fantastic too, because literally that is the last thing we were talking about before I went into the audio testing that we completely lost. And I tried to bring us back to, I'm like, I don't even remember what it was, but I'm glad we bookended like what we were doing by getting back to that and actually describing it. And I would say, whatever works for a lot of people. I mean, some people need to go to church and they pray, and it's a very explicitly Christian framework and understanding. Some people lean into the supernatural. They're gonna different stuff. And then astrology is one way to go. And sometimes, like, what am I trying to say? It's like, if it works. If it gets you where you're going, if it points you in a direction and you end up somewhere you're satisfied with, wasn't a waste of time. I don't have to understand it. I don't have to endorse it. I don't have to say that I like it or don't like it, but I definitely find those things fascinating. All of it. Like I was saying from back in the Art Bell days of just like, tell me everything weird about the world that people are curious about, but we have unresolved questions. And I'm open to all of it. And I think what you were saying about trying to feel more and get a sense from other people of how they knew they were on the right path, what feelings they were looking for, what results they achieved, and why those were meaningful for them. I think that's exactly the right way to go. And that came up talking about, being in the sea of people on their own path and not consulting them. And then I thought of that movie, the Jim Carrey movie, Yes Man, where
Yes Man.
Yeah, he's like just decides, I'm going to say yes to everything. And it goes overboard, but it opens his eyes to the fact that he said no to so much stuff. And I think that's I thought of that too, because of the idea of there's some people, now I'm not a believer in astrology, so to speak. I know I'm a Pisces and I think it's fascinating. I think a lot of it lines up. You laugh because you're like, yeah, he probably is. That makes sense, right? And
my mother's a Pisces, so yeah, I know Pisces people. So
yep, and that's amazing too. And I don't have to believe it either, in order to draw some value from it. It's like I said, I'm not a believer in that, but I think there's value in it too. Like, we've invented new systems. People go, oh, astrology, stars, that's nothing. Let me tell you about the Myers-Briggs personality types. And I'm like, do you see what's happening there in terms of like, we're just developing new systems for trying to understand what are these expressed characteristics we have. And now that maybe there's greater scientific validity with the Myers-Briggs, and I'm an INTJ and whatnot. I know that, I think INTJ. But I look at that and I go, how is this different from astrology? Really think about it. There's some tremendous overlap in these different things, even though one's scientifically validated and the other one's supposedly spooky woo.
I know.
But there's people who are like real believers. I mean, they elevate things to a belief level, and that happens in psychology and politics and all kinds of stuff.
Sure.
That was my tangent.
No, it's just, I've never seen something spit out such accurately depicted information that's based off of your birth date, the time of birth, the city of birth. That's it. And it goes back 88 days astrologically before that time, and then what astrological point it was at time of birth. And then I've done Myers-Briggs, I've done disc profiles, I've done strengths finders, I've done all kinds of surveys that have to ask you questions.
Yeah.
Lots of them usually. I've never seen something that actually goes off of conscious energy, universal energy. I mean, it's hard. It's very hard to even prove any of that. But I can tell you this: I'm the only one person that I can say I sat there, went through it, and said, "Yes, this all makes sense to me." Yeah. So, anyway, I'll have to send you the link to the website because the gal,
I want to see it.
Yeah, the gal who does it, her name is Miranda Mitchell. She's into human design and teaches it. I had her on my podcast actually, so she's a legit person who I think knows her stuff on this. So I'll have to send her your way or send you her way if you want to talk to her more about it.
Yeah. And then if she has any dreams, definitely I'll talk to anybody.
She may. I'm sure
That
she
would be
does.
fantastic. And actually, like speaking of networking and connecting and trying to build the future in our respective businesses, I come across someone to send your way or vice versa. But what I was actually trying to come back around to, and I'm glad you mentioned it too, is that a lot of times what happens with things that are like this is that people dismiss them before investigating them. They look at it and they say, well, that's just not possible. It belongs to this realm of things I've classified as a spooky woo. But
Yep.
what it is it's not fully understood. It's not well researched. And maybe if more people
Right.
gave it credence, they would look at it and go, let's see if we can figure out why this works. Because it looks like it does.
Yeah.
And suddenly we get an Archimedes in the bathtub situation. Water volume displacement. Nobody knew that until he like really spelled it out and then was able to give it some math.
Well,
It
I mean,
looked like-
at
it
one
looked like
time they
magic.
thought the sun revolved around the earth, right? Didn't Galileo think that? And then they found out that he was wrong. I think that's how that story went, but we know that
One of the
we
two, yeah.
revolve around the sun. So yeah, it's just that, the earth was flat. No, well, some people still believe that it is.
That's
I have
an
not been to outer space.
tangent, yeah.
I have not been to outer space, so I have not myself with my own physical eyes seen the earth.
Yep.
So I guess it may not look exactly like we think it does. But the point is, we don't know until we know and until we explore. So
yeah, you definitely have to take a look. And that means taking something seriously. And that means getting lost in the terminal sometimes and not really knowing where the destination is. Bring it back around.
So
maybe,
true.
Maybe next time, if this dream comes back, try and enjoy it. Be like, I'm just going to put out a folding chair and watch people move around. Where are they going? Why are they going there?
Yeah.
Maybe ask the travelers, where are you trying to get to? You may or may not be able to program that into the dream, but having this experience with me, hopefully, honestly, it stops the dream if it's unpleasant and you don't want to have it anymore because now you don't need it anymore, or changes the nature of it. And like, what can I learn from this? Now I'm gonna put myself back in there on purpose and say, show me something different. Show me what I'm missing. Show me.
I like
the
that.
next
Yeah.
step.
I do think that we can consciously do that. I believe more than not that with intention you can do almost anything. So I will put out the intention and see for sure what comes. And if something does come, I'll let you know because I find this kind of stuff fascinating. I like to keep the conversations going, even if it's just here on Discord having the chats back and forth. I love having connections. I'm a people person, so I love this ability to connect. Hence why I do a podcast as well too.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, let's keep the networking channels open because I think that we can both have some fruits of our labor that could come to us serendipitously if it's meant to be. So
I think so. And it's a funny thing too, because I had no one to talk to this week. You're it.
Yeah.
And
there we go.
We've been waiting to get together for like 5-6 months or something like that. And finally it just happens when it happens. I'm amazed by that kind of stuff. And a lot of times we get frustrated. I'm not making progress fast enough. You're not ready. Slow your roll.
I know.
Maybe that's the case. I don't know. I like that whole Chinese farmer thing, the old story of perhaps it's a good thing, perhaps it's not. We'll see how it turns out. One of my favorite little parables. But
I love parables too.
I think if you feel like we've got a pretty good understanding of the experience and maybe why it happened, what some of the individual elements see. If you have more questions, I'm happy to answer them, or we can wrap it up and call it an episode.
Only one more question, and this is something for me and my wife that we can never understand about dreams, and maybe it only gets answered in the context of the dream. But have you ever had a dream, or have you talked to anybody where you're trying to punch somebody or cause harm and you can't? You just with all your strength and might, you're hitting somebody or you're fighting somebody off, or you're trying to hit them or you're trying to pull a trigger and nothing happens. Have you ever heard of that? Because it happens a lot. To me and my wife.
Yeah. No, I think it's very much related to the, and this is why I love reading all these books. I'm getting this master class from all these great thinkers in the last literally 2,000 years of dreaming. This falls into that kind of failure of movement. You have an intent, a desire to enact some physical action in your dream, and you're prevented, frustrated. It's the slow movement through molasses. It's the punch that has no power behind it.
Right.
And
yes.
Yeah. No, it's running away from the monster. It's not making progress towards your goal. So the answer is it depends. Hey, there you go. Thanks for watching. But what does that really mean? So in this context, your failure to make progress as quickly, the experience of resistance towards your goal, we dialed it into what seems like you don't know where you're going. So there's this experience of not making progress in your mind, and it's being viscerally represented in your dream by this resistance to motion. So that could be in this dream. So in the punching dream, we would want to look at that. Why are you throwing the punch? Maybe. What's the context of the punch? This is, you're fighting off a bear to save a child or something. That's one kind of experience where maybe your brain's thinking this problem's so overwhelming, my punch is going to be weak. It's a bear. What am I going to do? Or, and again, this is why it depends. Another concept could be you are throwing a punch in the dream, but you're throwing the punch at your wife. You would never do this in real life, but you have something in you where it's like you want to punch back at something she represents in that moment. You had an argument but in your dream, you're like, what's holding your fist back? You don't really want to do this. You're fighting this urge to be resentful. Maybe.
Interesting.
All of these.
She's told me that she's tried to punch me a few times and it didn't hurt me. So,
and sometimes that's like a wake up thing. A lot of it depends on what are you experiencing.
I know there's a lot of intangibles and certain, it depends aspect. I was just curious, what does it mean? Whenever you can't, it's like a rubber fist or you're trying to inflict harm, but you can't. It's just it's happened to me numerous times in my dreams as well.
That's why I went to that precise place with it too, because so you're saying this was your wife and she was punching you, but feeling that resistance. She doesn't really want to. She doesn't want to hurt you. The punch isn't a punch. It's not to inflict damage. It's maybe to get attention, bring attention to a problem, communicate something important. Let me give this to you in a way you can feel it and understand it, as solid as connecting. And so this imagery comes to our mind that has nothing to do. I had one person, dream, I was talking to someone on Reddit, they stabbed their dog. They have no desire to stab their dog. It's not a knife in their hand. It's not their dog they're stabbing. It's a complete metaphor for something else going on in their life.
Right.
So that's why I tell people, don't take dreams literally. Take them seriously, but not literally necessarily.
That's a good way to say it. Yeah. Makes sense. No, thanks for that.
Like
that's that's all I had. I just thought I'd have to sneak that one in there because it happens in my dreams a lot. And she tells me a lot of her dreams. We talk a lot about dreams, actually, the two of us. We like to discuss what they mean or what they could possibly mean. So that one comes up a lot is, man, I was trying to beat the shit out of somebody or whoever or whatever, and I couldn't. And it's frustrating as hell. What could that mean? And I'm like, well, when I get on this podcast with this Benjamin gentleman, I'll have to ask him that perception from his, knowledge bank, if you will. So thank you for that, and thank you for the time. This has been great.
Absolutely.
Loved having the conversation. Loved it, all of it, not just the dream conversation, but of course our conversation before. So
and
thank you for all of
your
that
contributions, and that's why I want to make sure we plug your work again too. This has been our friend Ken Hanneman, Hannaman. I don't know why you need to know that, but I spelled it out anyway. It's not kenhanneman.com. It is ungraduated.com, the Ungraduated Living podcast. And the book is Ungraduated, Finding Your Why and Dropping Out of Outdated Belief Systems. And all of these links are going to be in the description below. And I'm just going to say on my behalf, hey, get a t-shirt, coffee mug, 14 books of historical dream literature. Please like, share, subscribe, tell your friends. Always need more volunteer dreamers. And that's the show. Ken, thanks for being here. I appreciate it.
Pleasure. Thanks, man. Definitely.
And everybody, thanks for listening.